Okay. So I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing tonight. And so again, this is interactive. So I want you guys to, I'm going to go through a REPC and just the steps of filling out an offer and kind of the thinking behind some of the boxes we're going to be filling in. But if you do have any questions, please stop me because there's a lot to learn when it comes to the REPC. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. And so basically we're going to start with, I'm just going to pull up one of my listings really quickly. How about you guys buy my house? That'd be so nice of you.
Can I
So
say something on listings right quick?
yeah,
So Ryan and I were doing this little rate incentive for any of you guys that have listings. Throw us as the preferred lender in the listing description as was excuse me, with us offering a 1.0 interest rate temporary interest rate buy down. Um, we've seen success in other LOs doing it with their referral partners. Could potentially get some more traction on your listing, get it sold quicker, and connect your seller more money because you're not having to offer as many seller concessions, for rate buy downs because we're offering something already.
I
So
love that. So just in the remarks, we're just going to put something
yeah,
like if you use cross-country mortgage, we will offer you a 1 point buy down,
yeah,
1%
and I've
rate
got
buy down.
specific verbiage for it that you can just copy and paste in there. Sort of Ryan as well, but it's something along those lines. I actually have an email I just sent today. I can just read it off to you just so you have kind of a rough idea.
If you want to send it to me, I can also share this with other people and I will
Yeah.
definitely throw it onto my own listings. And I
Okay.
know we have a couple of people with listings on here. I know Katie's just taken a listing. I don't know if she's on here yet, but so we can make sure all of our agents know that you're offering that. That is awesome.
For sure. This is what it sounds like. This property comes with a 1.0 rate buy down, reducing the buyer's interest rate by 1% for the first year of their loan. Buyer's not obligated to use Jesse King with the Lazik team at Prescott Mortgage or Ryan or whoever on our team to have the offer accepted. However, must use the Lazik team to receive the buy down. Blah blah blah. So pretty simple. You just throw it in, like I said, the remarks right there, and um, yeah. So I'll send it
I
over
love
to you so
that.
you have access to it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. I also didn't know about your $500 incentive for the event, so I'm excited to tell my potential new buyer about that. So
Yes, and it's no obligation. I'm not going to force you to apply or anything like that. Just more so educational, but we do offer that um, if it motivates you enough to fill an application.
cool. Okay. Thank you. So what I'm doing is I'm basically, so now you're out, you're with a buyer. You do want to have them pre-approved. So I'm glad we've been talking a lot about the loan stuff. You want to make sure that they are pre-approved before you write up an offer. You will be expected to send a pre-approval letter or proof of funds over to anybody that you're sending an offer to. So basically what you're going to do, you're going to be out showing homes. They tell you they want to do an offer on a house. So I'm going to take this MLS number and I'm just going to copy it. And you may want to just keep this up. I don't know if you guys know that you can do this, but we can just click on new tab. That way your property information stays here, but new tab. And then I'm going to go into the forms section, into the legacy forms. And I'm going to go find myself a REPC. So it's real estate purchase contract, or you can type in REPC. And then just kind of scroll through. So I'm going to go through a couple forms depending on how long we have tonight, but I'm going to create a packet to start. So one of the first things I need is the real estate purchase contract. So I'm going to click the plus sign. And then something else that I would need could be like an addendum. So I'm going to type in an addendum here. Some addendums that we could need are, we might need a closing cost addendum. What else? Some of the other stuff we can find inside of a blank addendum. So I'm going to go find our blank addendum. You can use this filter thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, addendum to real estate purchase contract. That's one that you use a lot. So I'm going to put that in here. So now we're going to create packet. And here we're just going to, the reason I copied the MLS number is you can auto-populate a lot of the information and you'll see that it puts the information in for you. So it just helps you as far as like data entry. So in here, I'm gonna paste the MLS number, click load, and then you do have to click on this fill update fields to update that. Once it's updated, you're just going to remove the box by clicking on the auto populate again. It goes away, but now you can see that it's filled in the address, it's filled in anything that's included. So it just auto populates some of that stuff so you don't have to worry so much about it. Specifically the address, I like that that just populates in there. So now what we're going to do is just start filling out the blanks. So today is the 8th, and then we're going to fill out the buyer. So we're going to say Jesse is going to buy this house. So with the name, and Jesse, please jump in, or Marcel while you guys are here. So with this name, what I always say is you want this name to match the pre-approval perfectly. So you're going to have people who either have middle names or maybe they're using, you know, a married name or anything like that. However they got pre-approved, you want it to match that pre-approval letter. So like most of the time I'm Terry L. Shytower, but maybe I got pre-approved as Terry Lynn. It needs to be in here as Terry Lynn. It needs to just completely match whatever is on that pre-approval letter. Spouses, you could do like Jesse and Sarah. I'm just totally making up who you're married to at the moment. So you can do it this way. You can do Jesse King and Sarah King. However you want to do that. You can do their names together or their names separately. Then you're going to come in here and you're going to fill out the owner's name. So this is why I like to have these open so that I can flip back into this property. So typically, if you click on the tax ID number, it's going to show you who the property owner is. So it's not always 100% accurate, but it's a good place to start. If it showed up as like an LLC or something and you don't know who it is, then I would just come over here and I would write owner of record. If you couldn't find it, and then during the process, the lender's probably going to ask you once they get the title report to update this information. They're going to ask you to do an addendum that outlines the name. So if you can find the name, you can ask the listing agent, you can look at tax records. Sometimes it's listed on the MLS, but those are just different ways you can find this. So, and you could see, I think, I can't remember if I was Lynn or L, but I would try to make that match too. So then you're going to come in here and you're going to do your earnest money. So earnest money, the general rule of thumb is that it's 1% of the purchase price. That's what most buyers should be prepared to pay. So on this house, if this is my newest listing, yeah. So on this house, we have it at $394,900. So they really should be putting around $4,000 for earnest money. If they don't, they can do, you know, 2,500, they can do 3,000. So it's okay if you're not doing 1%, but that's kind of the general rule or the guidance you want to give them. So we're going to do 5,000. So my math will be easier. And then here, I usually just put check. And typically it's going to be a cashier's check or it's going to be a personal check. So anything over $10,000 has to be a wire. So just know that if it's more than $10,000, then you would just put in here wire. And then as far as earnest money, they can actually.
With that, Terry.
Yeah. What'd you say?
I think what on earnest money, I think with the earnest money, it doesn't have to be a wire.
Doesn't have to be a wire. Do you guys, Marcel?
I think just at final closing has to be wire.
Okay, so I have been told most title companies don't want a personal check more than 10,000. Is that not true with you guys?
We'll take one because there's time for it to season.
You will take one. Sorry, I don't know if you're breaking up on everyone's end or just mine, but
That's on my end as well.
might be losing him.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, is this better?
Yes. Sorry, what were you saying
Okay.
about earnest money? You will accept it?
Yeah, so We'll accept personal check. I mean, most of the time, a large amount does get wired, but it's with the laws, it's for like the final down payment at closing is where it has to be a wire.
Okay. Perfect. So this is something, again, these are general speaking rules on whether the personal check. So
Yep.
you just want to check with who is getting this. So is it the brokerage getting your earnest money? Is it the title company getting your earnest money? Like every broker has a different opinion about this, about whether they want to hold checks or they don't want to hold checks, whether they want to hold the money, they don't want to hold the money. So every one of our market centers could be a little bit different. So just know the option is to have the money held at title or have the money held at the brokerage. That's one form I didn't put on our packet. If it is going to be held with title, there is an addendum you have to use saying that it would be held with title and not here at the brokerage. This automatically assumes that it's here at our brokerage. So if it's different, we have to amend that. So I'm going to put check, and I usually tell my client most of the time, if you ask somebody to write a check, they don't have one, or they do. Cashier's checks are great, and they can just bring it into the office and the office will deposit it, or you can take it to the title company. They'll deposit it. Your client can do it, or you can do it. I personally don't want to be in charge of somebody's personal check. So I always have my clients just deliver it themselves, or they can throw it in the mail, or we do have through command, we have what's called earnest. And that is a way that they can wire it, and you would send them a link to do that. It's more of like an ACH. It's going to attach right to their checking account. And that's an option too. So there is I think a $15 charge for that, but some people it's just more convenient for them. So there's a lot of different ways to do earnest money, but any questions on earnest money? That's kind of a big one.
What do we do in our market center then? We actually have our brokerage hold it?
Most of the time your broker, the brokerage is going to hold it. Yeah, so you're in South Valley. I know Rich doesn't like to hold a huge amount of earnest money. So I think maybe that's where I'm getting, like I said, every broker has kind of a different opinion. I think if it's more than $10,000, he'd prefer it to go to the title company. Because at the end of the day, all the money has to go to the title company anyway. But again, you're gonna have to do an addendum to get it to the title company. So either way you want to do it, I would say if it's a large
And that
amount, you're looking at putting it with title. Sorry, Marcel.
No, you're fine. That fee I've seen on those receipts is $18.
On the earnest?
Yeah, just as a notice, when I get those receipts at contract, it's usually like $18, just so everyone knows.
Okay, awesome. Inflation, right? It's gone up a little. Okay.
Yes, good call.
So then you're going to want to put the property number. Keep in mind when we're auto-populating this data, it is coming from the MLS, but it is input by a human. So you definitely want to double check the address, make sure you're actually putting an offer on the right house. I have heard funny stories, doesn't happen a lot, where somebody has actually written an offer on the neighbor's house, or maybe the unit number was wrong, and now all of a sudden we're buying the next door neighbor. So just double check your address, make sure it's correct. Make sure your zip code, your county is all correct. And then I typically will put in the tax ID number. You don't necessarily have to do it, but it's just one more way for everybody to double check to make sure we are all purchasing and meaning to purchase the right property. So tax ID number, it typically will auto-populate. If not, you can get it from the tax records. So just going back into here and clicking on this will take you to the tax records. So then moving right along, so included items. So I'm going to flip back and forth between buyer and seller. So this is really just kind of the rep C. When I'm listing a property, I will go through this included items section with my seller so that they understand what is expected to stay with the property. Some things that I think are very interesting that you wouldn't think about is like TV mounting brackets. So a lot of times they're like, oh, I'm taking my TV, they rip the brackets out of the wall, and next thing you know, there's holes and stuff. So TV mounting brackets, if they're currently on the wall, they have to stay on the wall. Mounted speakers, these can tend to be an issue. So if I'm listing a property and they don't want these things to stay, you just want to make sure that they get them all removed before you have people walking through and list the property. So if it's considered included or attached when a buyer comes through, it's automatically included. Curtain rods, drapery rods, those could be an issue. And the funny thing is, you'll sit down with a buyer and they're like, well, I don't really care if they leave the curtains. I didn't really like them anyway. I'm probably going to change them. And the seller says, oh, I don't really care. You know, I didn't really like them. They've been there a long time. When it comes to close something and the title company says, oh, we're including all of this according to the REPC, then it becomes an issue. So the things that you don't think will be an issue can turn into issues. So just make sure everybody knows what this says, what is included and not excluded. Solar panels are a big thing. Make sure you know whether they own the solar panels or they do not own the solar panels. Water softeners. I've had many arguments over water softeners because again, people either own them or they don't. So just make sure as a listing agent, you know what that seller is expected to stay there. And then as far as the buyer, obviously we want them to get as much and anything and everything that they possibly can. So you can see here, according to the MLS, all of this is included. So it auto-populated this. I would also, as a buyer's agent, I would click the boxes. It does not hurt to make sure that you're double covered. So even though the washer and dryer are included, I'm still going to click on this. As a listing agent, when you're receiving an offer, you do have to be very careful about this. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this washers, dryers, refrigerators are all plural. So that means if there's more than one in the house, which one are we including? Which one are we excluding? So you do want to get specific with this. Again, when I'm working with a buyer, I'd be happy if they got 3 refrigerators. But your seller's probably not going to be real happy if you tell them that all the refrigerators in the house are included. So you just need to make sure that you exclude something that says, you know, refrigerator in the garage to be excluded or refrigerator in the kitchen to be excluded. Because this can be, I've had many people fight over refrigerators, washers, and dryers. So I've had many agents have to buy refrigerators, washer, and dryers. I personally have bought, I don't know how many in my career, but this is a really, really sticky paragraph in here. So just make sure you know what you're asking for and what you're agreeing to when you represent the seller. Any questions on inclusions and exclusions? No? Okay. So water, so this basically, most residential properties is not something we need to worry about, but if there are any kind of water rights or anything, we do want to make sure that they are excluded, or they could be being sold or transferred outside of this contract. So this really happens more, I'd say, like on land or rural properties, the water will become some kind of a question. Typically not on most residential properties. You don't see anything with that. This is the next paragraph where a lot of people make mistakes. So this, we're just doing math here, but payment of the purchase price. So we're going to say, again, just for simple math, we're going to offer $400,000. You can write this however you want. So you can do commas, you can leave it this way, you could do cents if you want. Earnest money, they're doing $5,000 in earnest money. I never like to leave a blank box. So like even this box, I would do NA. Here, additional earnest money, we're not going to, so I would put a 0. I skip the new loan. I work these numbers backwards. So you do want to make sure that the purchase price you're offering and the purchase price on the end are the same number. This is one of the numbers I see that are messed up a lot because people kind of tend to start doing math here and making this be like the sum of these, which it's not. So it tells you right here, there's kind of a cheat sheet. It says total of lines A through E. So all of these lines need to total this. So balance of purchase price, I drop down here. This is their down payment. So you may or may not know what their down payment is. And just so you know, these numbers can change. So it's okay. Say they're like, we want to put $25,000 down. They work with the lender. The lender's like, oh, you don't really need that. Or, oh, great, you have 50,000. It doesn't matter if this number changes throughout the process. But you're just kind of doing math backwards. So if they're bringing in $50,000 in cash, this earnest money is actually going to go towards that down payment. So say they've told me they're bringing in 50,000. This is only going to be 45,000 because we're going to add in the $5,000 to make the total cash at closing 50,000. So now what I'm doing is I'm working backwards. We're not going to do any seller financing, and now I've got to figure out what the new loan is. So calculators are a good thing. So basically I'm going to go $5,000 plus $45,000. Yes, simple math. I don't necessarily need a calculator for this, right? So then your new loan is going to be $350. And then I'm going to calculate it backwards. And a lot of times the numbers are not this easy. So then I take A through E, 5,000 plus 350 plus 45,000 equals 400,000. So double check your math backwards, forwards, every which way. Because you can see it gets a little bit confusing, especially if these numbers are like 2,800 or 2,300 and you're trying to figure out what the new loan is. You have to know a lot of these numbers, but these two together equal the down payment. And these two always need to match. Any questions on the math? Okay. Sale of buyer's property. So if your buyer has another property to sell, then you do have to mark that it is conditioned upon them selling the other house. And there will be an addendum, which is called a subject to clause, that we will fill out in the case that they do have to sell their house first. If they do not have to sell their house first, that's great. We're going to put is not. And really, this is a question of their qualifying. So if they literally cannot qualify for this house without selling another house, legally, you have to put is. So this is where I get a lot of people are like, well, do they really have to know? Like, we'll just sell it behind the scenes. That would be fraudulent. So if they are selling another house and they do not qualify for this home without selling that house, you have to put that it is conditioned upon the sale of that house. So just, we obviously have to be very honest on these things. This kind of goes through settlement, closing, possession is another one that a lot of people kind of argue over. Most of the times, 99% of the time, especially representing a buyer, I'm going to put upon recording. So that just means as soon as the funds have been received, they've been sent out, and everything is transferred over to the buyer's name, it will be expected that the seller is gone, the buyer gets the keys. But there are reasons why it needs to be like, it could be 72 hours after recording. It could be 24 hours after recording. You can make those changes here. Sometimes on the MLS, it will say, most of the time when I'm listing a property, I will put arrange or negotiate. So that way, depending on my seller's situation, maybe they need 3 days after closing to move their stuff out. So this can all be negotiated, but just make sure you do negotiate it at this point, not necessarily at the end of the transaction. Most of the time I'm putting upon recording. This is the next tricky one. So prorations, assessments, any other payment obligations. So special assessments, this is really when there is any kind of an HOA involved. Marcel and I, we like to give the example of Daybreak just because it's a pretty good one, and there's other ones too. But they have a lot of different fees, and that really kind of comes down here of what the fees will be named. So we have transfer fees, we have change of ownership fees, we have community enhancement fees, we have HOA investment fees, and then you have this little etc. So a lot of times they don't have the same name, but basically what this means is the HOA is going to charge a certain percentage or a certain fee to transfer the ownership of the property. So we want to make sure we know who's going to pay for that. If I represent the buyer, I'm going to put seller for everything. Any special assessments up here, I'm going to put seller because I represent the buyer and I don't want the buyer to have to pay for anything. Special assessments, kind of back to that would be something, say that like the townhome project is going to redo all of the roofs or something. And so every homeowner is getting assessed a $20,000 assessment. That will transfer over to the buyer. So that's why it's so important. We're like, nope, seller, take care of all of this. But when you're on the other side and you're representing the seller, that also could be the responsibility of the seller if you accepted this contract. So it's very important that when you list a property in an HOA, you know what transfer fees, community enhancement fees, any special assessments. You want to get a hold of that HOA before you list the property because it can take some time to get this information from them too. But these can turn into big issues at closing. I'm sure Marcel can attest to that. because there's so much confusion on who's paying for what or who's agreed to it. They didn't know what they were agreeing to. Marcel, were you gonna say something?
I'd say, yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's good just get that up front, do a little research, and then Jesse could probably say as well, knowing exactly what's being required by the buyer to pay, so it doesn't push, qualification or closing costs, across the threshold that might cause a problem.
Yep.
Yeah, if it's anything specific that you want the seller to fix, like replace carpet, that has to be done before closing. So my recommendation, if it's not pointed out, like as dire needed to be replaced in the appraisal or the inspection, then I'll just get sell concessions without anything specific, and then you can take care of it after the fact. So minimize your closing cost up front, and then you can pay for it after, as to not hold up closing.
Yep. Awesome. So yeah, and sometimes you'll see, I don't know on this one. So you can see it will list like the HOA. So HOA is 142 a month. So your lender, as they're qualifying for this house, they're going to tell you like what the monthly fee is, what they qualify for. But HOA fees can either qualify or disqualify them from obtaining a house. But there's usually an HOA number on here. So just so you know, you can call and say, hey, can you tell me what the transfer fees are? Are there any other fees the buyer would need to be aware of? Are there any other fees the seller would need to be aware of? But there are numbers on here that you can call and get that information. So title companies do get access to like CC&Rs and things like that, but not a lot of these HOA documents. And sometimes we have to pay for them, which is just crazy. So instead of doing that, we will have our sellers just log in and get the information for us, give us the login, we can do it. But it can be a real pain, honestly, to get these documents. So very important you do it like the day you're taking the listing. Any other questions on that one or HOAs or anything? Okay. So other things, so you can see it auto populates who's representing who because I logged this in. So I would be the seller's agent. So I'm going to say that I represent the seller and the KW represents the seller. It auto populated my information down here for the buyer's agent because I'm writing the contract. So your buyer's agent information is going to auto populate, but because I'm the listing agent, it accidentally auto populated too. This is normally going to be blank for you. So you will fill this in. This is your information. So you're going to say, I represent the buyer. And then if for some reason, so if it really was one of you guys doing this deal with me, it would be limited agency. So I would represent the seller and you would represent the buyer, but the brokerage would represent both buyer and seller on both of these. If we were literally working for the same company, it becomes limited with the broker, even though there's two different agents involved. So just know most of the time you're doing deals with other companies. So most of the time you're just going to mark you're either representing the seller or the buyer. This just kind of goes through title insurance. What kind of title insurance will automatically be included? The seller and the buyers both have to have title policies. So that the seller will pay for one for the lender and for the buyer, and the buyer will pay one for the lender, which will be in their closing costs. Seller's disclosures. This is a good one to look at when you're a listing agent. These are everything that you have to be able to provide to the other side during a seller disclosure timeframe. Most of the time, this deadline is 3 to 5 business days. So these are like the HOA documents, all of that. You have to provide this within 3 days of getting an offer, which is not very long. But if you're ever wondering what you actually need, this is what you need. So you're going to need your actual written seller property condition disclosure, which is now like up to 15 pages. A commitment for title insurance. So again, when you take a listing, you want to let title know right away so they can make sure that they get you a copy of the title report, a copy of any CC&Rs, any minutes, budget, financial statements from the HOA. This is what takes a while. So a lot of times they don't just give them right to you. It takes a few days. If there's any kind of lease agreements or anything in place, any short-term rental bookings, if it's an Airbnb you're selling, just a lot of a lot of things, this is everything you have to have. Not everything applies, but most of it does, especially if it's in an HOA. Due diligence, so going back to you representing the buyer, you definitely want to make sure there's a due diligence clause in here. So you're going to mark is, it is conditioned upon them doing their due diligence items, which really this kind of goes through what they can do, but they can honestly do anything they want to do to make sure that this is the house that they want. This goes over how you cancel. So as long as we're canceling within the time frames and we haven't altered anything here in the REPC, then they will get their earnest money back. If they cancel after the due diligence deadline, chances are they're going to lose their earnest money. Appraisal, anytime you're getting a loan in the property, you will have to do that. Have to mark that the appraisal is conditioned. There are circumstances where appraisals can be waived. We did a lot of those when the market was super hot and people were overpaying outside of, the actual price of the home. Right now, I would say most of yours are coming in with the appraisal condition is conditioned. Financing, so most of the time you're going to have financing is required. So unless they're paying cash, you would use no financing required, but most of the time you're going to say it is. This earnest money section, so this just basically is a way that you could maybe beat somebody or show the seller that you're really extra serious. So we could make a portion of the earnest money non-refundable after their due diligence deadline. So if you wanted to do that, you could put, so say out of the $5,000, we're saying half of it will go non-refundable after they do their due diligence and everything. You would put that here. Right now, I'm not seeing people having to do this. So I don't leave an empty box. I would just put 0. This is additional earnest money. So this is talking about the earnest money you put up front. So the $5,000, what we're doing with that. This would be any additional earnest money. So maybe after their due diligence, they're going to add another $5,000 just to sweeten the pot a little bit. I'm not seeing this happening a lot right now either. In the days where we're competing with 10 and 20 and 50 offers, that's when these boxes really come into play. You can keep adding money so the seller's happy, or you can do non-refundable money. But right now, I would say everybody's good to just leave these at 0. Addendums, most of the time there are an addendum that will be attached to this. So maybe we're doing like a closing cost addendum. We're asking for closing costs. Maybe they're getting an FHA loan. So there are reasons to add addendums. So right now, and hopefully we'll have time, I'll show you a couple. So I'm going to say there are an addendum. We're going to do addendum number 1. And maybe we'll be able to have time to go over this FHA loan addendum. So if they're doing an FHA loan or a VA loan, you have to add an addendum to that. So those are probably your most 2 common addendums you would be using. Home warranty. So if I'm representing a buyer, I do like to ask for a home warranty. So I will say that there will be a home warranty. It is going to be ordered by the buyer. I want the buyer to choose where it's going. We will put in here, I usually do like around $600. That's usually going to cover a pretty good home warranty. And I want to make sure, this one's selected by the buyer, but paid for by the seller. So just don't mess up these boxes. They're pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to have my buyer pick it, my buyer order it, and I'm going to have the seller pay for it. If you didn't want the seller to pay for it, you could always say the buyer's going to pay for it. Either way. Kind of the next few things. So mediation. So this just basically says that you either will or you may go to mediation. You're going to get 2 opinions on this. I most of the time will put shall. So if there's any kind of conflict that comes up, I want to go to mediation, because mediation is just a quarter, like mediation could be hundreds of dollars and suing somebody is thousands of dollars. And 9 times out of 10, a mediation will work before you have to sue each other. So I like to do shall. I just truly believe, the person with the most money is going to win in court. And maybe my buyer's not in that position to do that. However, I have had clients where they have said, you make sure that if I have any issues, I can sue somebody. That would be the may at the options. So if you have a client that's like that, or attorney clients, I don't know, there's lots of different reasons why somebody may want the option to go straight to court instead of doing a mediation. My opinion is I just do shall on all of them. Let's go to mediation first. Mediation can also be done here in the brokerage with a broker. Doesn't have to be through an actual mediator. So it can save everybody lots of money. This kind of goes through default, so you want to be familiar with how default works, who gets what. The biggest thing that I tell my sellers when they accept this offer is I will let them know they really can't back out of this, and if they do, they will have to pay the buyer earnest money or be sued. When a buyer backs out, they basically lose their earnest money. So, and a buyer has many more outs in this contract, a seller really does not. So just make sure you really understand what happens if a buyer defaults versus a seller defaulting. These contracts are very buyer friendly. So just know that they're not very seller friendly. They're very good for buyers. If you went to court, attorney fees, that's going to cover that. Notices, all notices have to be in writing and signed by the person giving notice. Typically, you cannot assign this contract unless you have written consent by everybody. That would be another addendum. This covers insurance of the property, which basically the seller is responsible for the home, clear up until, you know, the time that it transfers title. There is always a little weird spot where it's like the seller has written off the house and the buyer doesn't actually own it yet. So I tell people don't cancel any insurance, buyer, get your insurance in place. But that just kind of talks about what's going to happen there. Time is of the essence. So in here, it talks about the difference between days and calendar days and also time. So time basically here in Utah, it's 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Any deadline is 5 p.m. So any of these deadlines we're going to write, they all expire at 5 p.m. on that date, 5:01, and you're out of the contract unless you have agreed in writing to change that. So you could say, we want our due diligence to be 10 p.m. on this date. As long as everybody agrees to it, it's now 10 p.m. But if you're not talking times, it's always going to be 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for this contract. This goes through acceptance, so acceptance and how it occurs. So basically, once all parties have signed it, and the big thing is it has been communicated. So you could all sign this. Somebody could tell you, oh, my sellers agreed to the contract. They have signed it and they've told you that they have signed it, but you don't actually have a copy of this. You're still under contract because they've communicated that the other party has signed it or accepted it. Deadlines. So these deadlines, I'm going to give you a general rule of thumb on these. You can pick deadlines and I'll give you a couple ideas on how you pick deadlines. But the general rule of thumb, so seller disclosure deadline is typically 3 to 5 days from when you think it will be accepted. And the reason I say that, so I pull up this calendar. If I were writing an offer today, I'm going to check with the listing agent. Hey, when can you get me a response? Maybe they're going to tell me, well, my client's out of town and won't be here till Monday. Or my client's on an airplane, but I think I can get to him on Saturday. So you're kind of looking at these. And then I'm going to start counting my days when I think it will be accepted. So if I write the offer today, he thinks he can get me a response on Saturday. I'm going to start counting my business days right here. So I'm going to look, I'm going to go 12, 13, 14. Okay, I probably want my seller disclosures by the 14th. 3 to 5 days, somewhere in there. Due diligence, the general rule of thumb on this is 7 to 10 days from acceptance. So again, I'm kind of looking, I'm guessing I'm going to get a response somewhere around here. So I could do 7 to 10 days. I could give them this full week. I also look into like my client's schedule. So I would like them to be available for the home inspector. Maybe they can only go on Saturday. So I want to make sure I have, you know, at least till Saturday. I personally don't like doing deadlines on the weekends, and you always want to watch for holidays. It's really frustrating as a listing agent when somebody does like a Sunday. We're so blessed in Utah that people don't expect us to work on Sundays, but I have had agents call me like 6 p.m. on a Sunday and, hey, we want you and your seller to agree to this repair. Well, my seller's not going to respond. So don't do that to people. I would push it to the next Monday. And this is a holiday, ironically. So make sure you know where the holidays are too. So on a due diligence, I wouldn't care so much about the holiday. So I'm probably going to keep it there. This is more for closing. Title companies work off of like bank hours, lenders are bank hours. So anytime that there's like a bank closing, your lenders and your title people will not be able to process the loan or the closing on those days. So try not to do that. Financing and appraisal, this deadline is generally 15 to 21 days from when you think it will be accepted. This one, I always involve my lender. So I'm gonna call him up. I'm gonna say, hey, Jesse, I'm writing an offer today. Where are you guys at on getting loans processed? And he'll be like, oh, we're 2 weeks out, we're 3 weeks out. You wanna make sure you know how quickly they can get a loan done. So 15 to 21 is like pretty common for getting a financing and appraisal deadline, and then they can wrap it up like in 30 days. Most contracts I'd say are 30 days, but Jesse, what were you gonna say about that?
I was just gonna say, if we need to do a quick close, we have got a program where we can close within 12 days. It's our fast track program, so we pre-underwrite everything, and we're just waiting on an appraisal after we go under contract. So that can be closing in 12 days. But if we don't go through the route and we still need a quick close, I usually write 21 days and then push to do, internally to do quicker than that. So I don't want to set myself up for failure and then, end up looking like a fool after that. So 21
Yeah.
days normally, but for a fast track, which I try to push everyone through, because everything gets vetted out beforehand, we can do it in 12 days, which at that point you're competing with cash offers.
Yep.
So,
That's awesome. And then also those quick closes, those 12 days, those 10 days, all of that really have a lot of variables too. So is your client performing fast? Are they doing exactly what that lender's asking them to do quickly? Because if they're not, that's going to tie the lender's hands. And then the other thing I want to point out with these deadlines is so like the financing and appraisal. So on this one, I would probably do, let's see, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. This probably would go into March. I might do like March 8th, and then I would settle like a week later. So I'd do like March 15th. And so today's the 8th. This is a little bit longer than a 30-day, but this is kind of a typical 30-day. We do have that holiday in there. But keep in mind that when I'm asking Jesse to make sure my loan is approved and the appraisal is done, his deadline of 15 to 21 days starts the exact same date that this seller disclosure deadline starts. So basically what I'm saying is don't wait, even though this due diligence we have until the 19th, you don't want to wait. You don't want to use up all that time because now you're asking Jesse and his company to do this loan in 1 week. If you're not letting them do the appraisal and things like that. So everything, time is of the essence. You're moving as fast as you possibly can. So when I go under contract with somebody, the very next person that I'm talking to is a home inspector. I'm like, hey, how quickly can you get in there? So even though I have till the 19th to do this, what you have until the 19th to do is get a home inspection, get all of your third party, like, what am I trying to say? Not invoices, but like estimates and things. Say you need some repairs done and the seller wants to get estimates. And so due diligence can turn into a lengthy thing, but we want to go through it as fast as possible. So then I can call Jesse up, in the next, maybe like on Tuesday or Wednesday and say, hey, we're done with inspection. Go ahead and order appraisal. The reason I don't want Jesse to order the appraisal the exact same day I'm ordering the home inspection is because if we don't make it through the home inspection, I don't want anybody to have to pay for an appraisal if we're not moving forward on this house. So it's very important that you're working these deadlines very quickly and very efficiently, and you're also communicating at a very high level where you're at in the process. So for me, when I'm working with a buyer, I'm going to do the home inspection with them. I'm going to, that day at the home inspection, I'm going to say, okay, was there anything you saw here today that would be a deal killer for you? And they're like, you know what? I would love it if they would fix this, this, and this. But if they're not willing to do it, I'm going to have my uncle do it and we're going to move forward. I'm like, great. My next call is to Jesse. Hey, no deal killers in here. Go ahead and order the appraisal. Now, if that inspection doesn't go well and they're like, yeah, if they don't replace this roof, I'm canceling. I'm going to call Jesse and say, hey, hold off. Don't order the appraisal yet because I've got to negotiate a roof. But I'm going to do it fast because I don't want him to sit there and wait for us to get through the inspection. So the point is there's a lot of people in this process and the 30 days goes by so fast. You have no idea how fast 30 days goes by till you're under contract. Anything else you guys want to say on deadlines? Did we kind of cover that pretty well? Just move quickly. And really, like I said, so due diligence, your inspection's done, your repairs, you have everything agreed to, what they're going to fix, what they're not going to fix. It's not calling the agent on the 19th and saying, hey, we want a roof repair. Yes or no. So give the seller time to go through that. They might want to, have a roofer come in and get 3 different estimates, things like that. So give them enough time. And same with the financing and appraisal. This isn't just for the appraisal. Like they've got to get the appraisal back. They've got to get everything back through underwriting. They basically have to have your 100% loan approval by this date. So if they got the appraisal back on March 7th, there's no way they're going to get you 100% approval by March 8th. So move fast.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so during the inspection, if something comes back wrong, so when does the seller need to fix whatever is wrong? So before the deadline or before like the appraisal
Good
deadline?
question. Very good question. So that is all going to be negotiated. So it depends on the repair. We're going to talk about FHA if I have time really quick, but if something comes up on the FHA inspection, that is going to have to be fixed before closing. Something like a roof repair, depending on how you negotiate it, maybe you need a water heater replaced or something like that. Most of the time it's done before closing. It's not necessarily done before like appraisal or before the due diligence. It's just done before they transfer the house to the other person most of the time. There will be times when you could do something where there'll be a credit issued, or you could negotiate more closing costs for the seller not to make the repair and just give your buyer the credit. They could lower the purchase price. So there's a lot of different things, but you're going to be negotiating all of that through that due diligence deadline. And then the actual repairs don't have to be fixed during that time, just before closing. And it really depends on the repair. A lender can see a repair and require something to be done. Something like that. Does that answer your
Thank you.
question? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'll show you a couple of the repair addendums, so it will make more sense when I show those to you. So we'll finish up the REPC. Any other questions on the REPC? So, offer and acceptance. This again, I don't like this. This is my pet peeve deadline. I hate this deadline because it expires a lot. So I don't want to rewrite any contracts. I don't want this to expire. So basically what this is it's saying you're giving the seller until a certain time to either accept or counter your offer. If the time lapses, everything is expired. So I'm asking the listing agent, hey, when can you get back to me? And he's like, oh, I hope I can get back to you tomorrow by 10. And I put 10 in here, and the seller doesn't respond till Saturday. Now we have to do an addendum to either extend this deadline, agree on something different. So I just don't like this deadline. It has a purpose. But make sure you know what this is. If you don't know like when they're going to respond, you can't get a hold of the agent. I would say a good time frame would be 24 hours. So if I were to submit this offer tonight, I would say seller has until maybe 8 p.m. tomorrow night. But if you pass that, then you're going to have to do another addendum to reinstate this offer. So you can leave this blank. I don't know how our brokers feel about it. I am a broker as well. I leave mine blank a lot, just so you know, because I don't want it to expire. So any questions on that or anything else with the REPC? So we can move on to a couple addendums. Okay. So the next thing, so we did start creating a packet. So I'm going to go to the next form in here. So this is a closing cost addendum, which I'm going to skip this one for a second. I'm going to show you something else. So pretend I didn't show that to you. We're going to go to this. So this is your blank addendum. The nice thing about this addendum, so this would be addendum number 1. They're always labeled. I like to write mine like this. You'll see them written a lot of different ways. So I don't know, Jesse, do you guys have a preference, or Marcel? Marcel's gone, I think, but do you guys even have a preference what this looks like?
On the addendum number?
Yeah.
No.
Have you ever seen like A or B or C?
I usually just have number.
Okay.
I've never seen a letter, but
Okay.
it doesn't matter if it's spelled out 1 or has the actual number.
Okay.
But
So I do this just, I don't know, probably overkill, but so you're just basically going to numerically number any addendums. And then this is going to be addendum. You're going to make sure that it's the same date as your offer, which would be today. You can see it auto-populated again, the information, which is so nice. And then you're going to fill out the buyer and you're going to fill out the seller. Then down here, an addendum is meant for you to be able to change anything you need to. So you could say something like all parties agree to blank. Something like that. So you can make up your own verbiage here, which I would caution you, there will be times that you need to do it. We don't want to play attorneys. So the nice thing is there's a lot of clauses in here. So the one I was going to show you, the closing cost, it's already in here. So say that we're going to do a closing cost. We're going to ask the seller to pay our closing costs. So I'm going to put that here. Let's just say, so I personally am related to this seller. So disclosure of interest, I'm going to put that in here. And what else do we see a lot? We could do a subject to clause. I don't think we're gonna have time to go through all of that tonight. So I'll go through these two. And then I also want to say something like, so what I would do first, so say I wanted to do like all parties agree, earnest money will be non-refundable upon acceptance. Like that's a change of something that I want to change on the Rep C, that there is not a clause for. So I'm going to use all of these and type that. So you're going to load these clauses first, and they're going to number them. So now we have number 1 is closing costs, number 2 is disclosure of interest. So now I'm going to go number 3 is my all parties agree to whatever. So whatever verbiage I needed to change, just make sure you're numbering them appropriately. So you can see 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter how it goes in here. If my disclosure of interest was first, that would just be number 1 instead of number 2. So going through this, that's why I like the blank addendum, because there's just so many options for it and you don't have to use a whole bunch of other addendums. All of these are actual addendums, these 2 closing costs and disclosure. That would just mean right now we'd have 3 additional addendums, which we don't want to do. So let's put them all into one. So here we can say we want, this would be for a conventional loan. We want the seller to contribute whatever your lender says. So I tried to get an exact amount from the lender. I will try to say, hey, Jesse, you know, what did Jojo, the buyer, what did they need for closing costs? He's going to say, what's the purchase price? What's this? You're probably going to want to ask for $5,000 or whatever. But right now we could be like buying the rate down. There could be a lot of things that we're doing. So it's important that you're asking for the proper amount. Maybe their closing costs are only 5,000, but we're going to buy the rate down. So now I'm going to ask for 10,000. So involve your lender when it comes to this one. Just make sure your lender knows what you're asking for.
Yes, because there are limits to how much you can ask for depending on the program and how much you put down, etc.
Good point. Yes, thank you. So yeah, make sure you're not just guessing this. It's hard to change these numbers once you go under contract. So then this one, personal interest. So anytime that you are involved in a transaction where you're either related to the buyer or the seller, or you're doing something on your own, we do have to disclose it. So in this case, we would say the seller is a real estate agent because I am actually the seller of this property. If my husband were buying it, I would say the seller is a relative of this person, vice versa, buyer, whatever. So just know that as licensed agents, we do have to disclose if we're involved in the transaction. So I'm doing that through here. Same thing here, you're going to put your deadline. So if I'm submitting this with the Rep C, I'm going to have this be the exact same deadline as the Rep C. Any questions on this addendum or what you can do with these addendums? Clear as mud, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to run really quickly through. I know I try to keep these at an hour. This class gets a little bit long, but I do want to show you the FHA addendum because it, oh, thanks, Nua. Sorry, I just saw the chat. So Nua said, so convenient to have addendums put onto one rather than having multiple. It is. I know the lenders appreciate that too. Jesse had to jump off. Same with title. I've seen contracts where it's just like 8, 9, 10 addendums. It's like, oh my gosh, people, get this together. So it's nice if you can throw them all into one. And there's so many on here. So 1031 exchange, you can search in here, like subject to. So there's so many ways to add things in here. There's a lot of them. Good comments on there. So the last one I want to show you guys, I guess I didn't put it in here. So we're going to go back into the forms section. Have to move your sweet faces around here. Okay, so we're gonna go legacy forms, and then you can always just filter. So I'm gonna go FHA. This document is required if they're doing an FHA loan, a VA loan, most Utah housing loans, all of that are FHA. They're gonna require this document. So make sure that you have that on here. So we're going to create the packet. So let's pretend that I didn't do the closing costs on the other addendum. I just did my disclosure and I did my non-refundable earnest money, but they're doing an FHA loan. This is going to be addendum number 2. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2, but it's got to be in order, right? Same thing, we're going to put today's date because we're submitting this with the offer. You're going to put the buyer and the seller's name, the address, which we could auto-populate again if we wanted to. Which you're going to hit load, fill, and then this auto-populate form to make the box go away. Fills in the address. So now you're going to fill this in. Buyers applying for an FHA or VA loan. And on here, it does give you an option to ask for closing costs. So that's why I was saying if you're going FHA, you're going to use this document to ask for closing costs. If you're doing conventional, you'll use a blank addendum inserting the closing cost addendum in order to ask for closing costs. So you don't need it in the other one if you're using an FHA addendum. Hopefully that makes sense. So FHA is a government-backed loan, and so they are really cautious. FHA loans are great, nothing to be scared of. They are meant for people maybe with a little less credit, maybe a little less money down, our VAs, first-time home buyers, people like that, that we really want to help out. An FHA loan is usually done, but it is backed up by the government. So they are a little more strict when it comes to the actual house. So they want to make sure that it's safe. You can Google and it will give you a checklist of like what would make a property not be able to go FHA, which is really good for you as a listing agent when you're walking through a house to determine if you should advertise if the property can go FHA. But when you're representing a buyer, so when I'm walking through homes, and you will get good at this, even though maybe you haven't walked through homes before, that's totally fine. You will start to notice things. So especially after you've done a few FHA deals, when I'm walking through a house, I'm just looking for safety items. Like, are there any windows that are broken? Are there any handrails that are missing? Are there screens on the windows? When I walked up the stairs, did it feel weird? You know, you've walked up those stairs where you're like, these are too short, or these are too big, or there was no handrail. So anything like that that comes across as like a safety item, that's what is going to probably come out in that inspection and have to be repaired. So in here, seller is going to be required to make those repairs. The buyer cannot make those repairs. So I'm just kind of guessing, like, I would say $500 to $1,000 is usually pretty good on here. If I go through the house and it's wonderful and great and I don't see any issues, it's okay to put a 0 here as well. It's nice to put a little bit just in case so your buyer doesn't have to be responsible for them. But typically what's going to happen is during the FHA inspection and the inspection with the actual home inspector, repairs are going to come up regardless, and you'll just negotiate through it. So this isn't that big of a deal, but if there are something that the actual appraiser says has to be fixed, this is the case where that has to be fixed before it can get the final loan approval. So that's kind of going back to Erica's question. This would be one of those cases where it's required to be fixed. They also required to do a termite inspection. So here I would put maybe, let's just say $500. And termite inspections are usually around under $100. So I would put $100 here, and the seller is going to be required to pay for that. So on the flip side, when you receive an offer on your listing, just make sure you're looking at this and making sure your seller is comfortable knowing that they're going to have to pay for this. So this will 100% happen regardless. There will have to be a termite inspection done. This is variable. This all depends. This amount it could be nothing and it could be more. But just help them understand when they accept an FHA offer. And then this is the section where you're going to put any closing costs that you need. So just like the other one, you do want to make sure your lender's involved and make sure that the lender is telling you how much you can ask for, how much you should ask for. There's a lot of different things we can buy for the buyer when it comes to loans, like reducing the interest rate, paying for the loan costs, all of that. So this is where you're going to put in that $10,000 or whatever your lender is telling you you're going to need. Put that in here. So as a listing agent, make sure you're looking at this to know how much the buyer is asking the seller to pay for. And then the same down here, you just want to make sure that this deadline matches your REPC, your other addendums and everything there. So that's the REPC, that's writing an offer, kind of accepting an offer. And then also these are the most common addendums that you would be using. There are others that will come into play, but these are really the most common. So any other questions regarding this? If I told
After
you,
you fill out, sorry,
no,
after
go
you
ahead.
fill out all the forms, then do you save them as the packet like that, on the button, and then send them through DocuSign, or what do you do after?
Good question. Good question, Norma. So yes, I would save the packet. You can say whatever you want. I think we had Jesse buying this, so I would say Jesse buyer, like nobody's gonna see it, whatever makes sense to you. So you're gonna save it. Now it's saved. If I were to, right now I'm gonna be submitting this offer, I need my buyer to sign it. I'm just gonna do a print PDF. Hopefully you guys are okay on time. I am. If you want me to show you DocuSign, I will do that right now because that's a very good question. I'm happy to take some extra time to show you that. So I'm just going to download this to my computer. You can call it Jesse offer. Now it's saved to your computer. So now I'm going to get rid of that. So if anybody's jumping off now, just because we're past 6:30, the one thing I just want to say before I show you DocuSign is I want you guys all to go and practice writing an offer. I cannot express that enough. What I would love even more is for you to actually write up an offer, pretend you're buying a house, pretend you're working with a buyer, fill out as the REPC the best you possibly can, come up with the addendums you think you need, and send it to Nick or I to review. What I can tell you about writing an offer, it is the scariest thing if you've never done it before. And here comes your buyer, you're so excited, it's time to write up an offer and you have no idea how to do it, or you maybe know how to do it, but you panic. And then you're calling and you're just like, it's a panicky feeling. So the biggest thing I can tell you is please, please, please practice the REPC. Besides the MLS, this is going to be your #1 tool. You're expected to know it inside and out. So please practice this. You should practice 2 or 3 different scenarios, FHA loans, going through repairs, all of that stuff. So practice this. Can't say that enough. So if you're going to stay on for a second, I'm going to show you DocuSign. So now that I've saved it to my computer, I go straight through my DocuSign. And I'm on this desktop computer, which I hope I know my logins. So you do get DocuSign with your transaction fee or not your transaction fee, but your tech fee that you pay to Keller Williams every month. You do get a free DocuSign account. So you want to go ahead and log into that. Yay, my login and password are there. And you can use DocuSign for anything. So it doesn't just have to be real estate. So I use this all the time for anybody who needs my signature. So then you're just going to do start. And then we're going to send an envelope or create an envelope. And then you're going to upload your files here so you can browse straight from your computer. I'm going to put Jesse's offer in here. And then now you're going to put who needs to sign. So for tonight's purpose, I'm going to have me sign it just so I can show you, but you're going to put in your client's name and you're going to put in your client's email. If there's 2 clients, so like husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever, there's 2 clients, you do have to have 2 separate emails. So a lot of times I'll have a husband and wife where they're like, oh, we only have 1 email address. I do have to have them make up another email address so that there's 2 email addresses. You can't send it to just 1. So if there's another person, you would add another person here. You can see it does another color. For this case, we're only going to do 1 signer. Here is the email they're going to receive. I don't ever change this. I just let it go. And it just sends to them complete with DocuSign and whatever you've named the PDF. But you're welcome to go in here and just say, you could be cute about it. Your first home offer, whatever you want to do. You could write a cute message, whatever your personality is. Mine is just to send it. So I send it over. So then you're going to go next. And then this is pretty intuitive, but again, this is something you want to practice because you can see it's taken me an hour just to kind of explain filling this out and a little bit longer to go through all of this. If you've never done it before, it's going to take you a while the first few times. Get all of that out on a fake person. So practice, practice. Oh, so this only saved, when I did the print preview, it only saved the one packet because I added the FHA. So you would have had to have gone back and done the print PDF on the entire Rep C, the other addendum, and this addendum. So hopefully you guys know what I mean. This wasn't included in that first packet. So when I went to save the packet, it was just this addendum. So either way, it works out the same. So I'll show you how that works. So now you can see here, this is Terry who's signing. If there were other people, like the extra person would be in a different color. So say it's husband, wife, you'd see a blue one right here. So we're gonna go with Terry and everywhere that she needs to sign. So initials, you just grab it, it's drop and drag. Date signed, you just grab it and drop and drag. The nice thing is, so with a Rep C, you need this on every single page. There are tricks to DocuSign that you will kind of learn as you practice, but you can do this. You can go like this. You can copy and paste it. So then I would go down here, and then I'm going to paste it, and you can move it around, make sure it goes where you want it. And that's nice when you're doing a Rep C that has 6 or 7 pages where it needs it. So I copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste all the way down. Or you don't have to copy and paste. You can literally just, say it's right here. You're going to drag the signature over, drag this over. But if there was another signature line, you could copy paste this, right? Be complete on here. So I do see a lot of times people won't do the check boxes. Just take the time to make sure that it's correct. So in this case, we're going to say Terry is the buyer. So I'm going to do checkbox. Move it right here. You have to go over here to the right-hand side and click checkbox value and check it off. Then you could do the same thing. You can copy paste this and say that you have another buyer and you can drag it over here. So just know there are little tricks to it, but if you didn't know that trick, you would just go checkbox over here, back over here, double check or check it. So yeah, check boxes, but the biggest thing you're going to be doing is signature, initial, and dates. Those are the most common things you're going to do. And I'm not going to send this, but if I were ready to send it, you just click send. And then it goes to them. It's going to get the signature. It will come back to you. It's going to say DocuSign complete. When it DocuSign complete comes back to you, it's going to be a PDF. Then you would attach it to an email with your pre-approval letter or proof of funds. And then that's what you're going to send over to the listing agent when you're presenting your offer. Good question, Norma. Any other questions on what we've learned tonight? No questions. Well, thank you for sticking with me so late this evening. I appreciate you guys joining. And I would ask you one question. What action are you going to take on in the next 24 hours with what you've learned tonight? What piece of information are you going to take action on?
I'm going to fill out the practice and send it to myself like you did, because it's actually a lot
It
to
is.
fill out. Yeah.
It's a lot. And can you imagine the pressure of knowing that there's a timeline, there's a deadline, there's multiple offers, there's a listing agent, there's a buyer, all of that pressure on you, plus going through all of this, and you've never done it before. So I'm so excited to hear you're going to practice. Send it to me. If you want me to review it, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that sounds good. That's another thing I wanted to know. Once you fill it out and you have everything, do you usually go over the contract, before I send it to my client to sign, or do I just send it straight to my client and then send it to you? What do you do?
I would say it's really up to you and your clients. Most of the time, honestly, my client trusts me so much But it is a really good idea to go over all of it. So sometimes in the buyer presentation, I will break down the REPC so they understand what each paragraph means. With a buyer, it's a little bit easier to just, they kind of trust you. Hey, we want to make sure you get the fridge. You're going to pay this amount. So I will tell them, hey, please review this. Let me know what questions. Most buyers, I find, they really do just trust you. Now with a seller, I'm going to go through almost line by line with my seller, because with a buyer, I can back them out for almost any reason, clear up until the financing and appraisal deadline with no repercussions. A seller, you cannot back out. So it's very different on who your client is and maybe how tech savvy they are, maybe how comfortable they are with the process. And then you do always want to make sure anything a seller or buyer signs, that they get a copy of it after they've signed it, so they can continue to review it and ask questions and things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other action are you guys going to take from this? Let's get one more person who's going to take action on it.
For me, since I'm new to all this, I probably will just run samples with my sister, with my brother, try to fake contracts with them. So gonna,
Love that.
yeah, get that out of the way. So practice.
Yes. Lots of practice. I can't say it enough. I mean, you're not going to want to go to the top surgeon that has never performed a surgery before. We don't want to be those people. We're not going to practice on our clients. We want to practice on everything else but a real live client, just like a surgeon's going to practice on everything else except for a real live client, right? So practice them, even if you are, you're reading the documents, make sure you know what they mean, make sure, because if you have questions, let us answer them for you before you ever have to use them. And every scenario is different. I can't tell you. I still go to my broker all the time. So not expected to know everything, just expected to know kind of the meat and potatoes of this contract and what it means. So I'm going to make fake contracts too on the most common ones, so I know and feel comfortable what I'm doing. Awesome. Thanks, Nua. That's really all you guys have to do. Just practice. I tell people, like, I had somebody send me an MLS number. It was like a $4 million property, and I played with that property. I ran CM. It was just so pretty. I wanted to play with it. So go find your dream home. Go on the MLS, find your dream home, decide what you would offer on it, and go write yourself an offer. Or do it like Michelle said, brother, sister, family members, but go practice on it. Make it fun. Okay, you guys, well, I appreciate you being here tonight. Let me know what else I can help you with. We will be having our 8:30 morning call tomorrow. If I don't see you again tomorrow, have a great weekend. Monday, we will be back at it. We do have Ignite happening next week. So 9 to noon, Monday through Friday. Key points, if you've been through it before, I know a few of you have. We do always bring in an appraiser who can go through like valuing homes. That's always a good one to go through more than once. Which a lot of the classes are. And then we will have our Monday Mastery class at 4 p.m. I don't know the location. Check your calendar for that. So let me know what we can help you with. We're available all weekend for anything that should come up. So have a good night, you guys.
Good night, thanks.
You too.
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.